Alright, so we're back, and so we've already talked about like the chest and the stuff that basically attaches to the core, so we're not going to get into that a little bit more. One thing that I will add on is that we have a muscle that comes in here to the posterior aspect and feeds into the deltoid area. So we have that posterior deltoid, which is going to be one of the muscles that we use to pull back. It's going to be one that's going to add to a little bit of external rotation and a little bit of abduction, right? So getting into kind of more this area, right? We've talked about our deltoids and all that. We've talked about a little bit of this, and I just want to double check to make sure that the long head goes. Doesn't actually say which one's medial. Okay. But if I remember correctly, basically we have 3 heads to our biceps, right? And so the ones that's going to feed kind of here into the clavicle and come all the way down, we have this one. And I'm being a dumbass because these actually go down here. So you're predominantly, when it comes to your when it comes to your biceps muscles, right, basically we do have the long head of your biceps femoris, which is going to feed into your clavicle, which is going to aid in shoulder flexion. This is flexion, by the way. This is extension, right? Flexion, extension, right? With the hip, this is flexion. This is extension. With the back, flexion, extension, so on and so forth, right? So the long head of the biceps femoris is the only muscle that's in your arm that I know of. Maybe I need to double check on my triceps, but that actually articulates both joints, right? So we talked about that with the hamstring complex, and then we're going to be talking about that here with this complex. Now, we do also have another head of your biceps, just like with your hamstrings, right? That's going to be kind of more medial and come down here. So your biceps femoris, pretty much mostly, or your biceps brachii and all that, they pretty much just do this and they do this, but we do have the brachioradialis, which is going to aid in the external rotation. That's kind of that little nub that comes here, right? So it's going to help a little bit with the external rotation of your lower extremity. Now, a lot of times we don't really, as personal trainers, we don't really go into a whole lot of what's going on down here because, again, it's going to be very complicated, just like we don't really talk a whole lot about what's going on in the feet, even though, because there's a lot of little minor muscles that are in there, and it's actually relatively complicated. So, but I think it's actually an important thing to know. So we do know that this, which when we get a lateral epicondylitis, one of the things that's going to become inflamed is that radiobrachialis, that longer muscle there, right? And so we do have, I don't want to go into as much detail as the book is going into right now, but I kind of want to talk about kind of what happens a little bit here. Now, as far as our fingers go and our wrist goes, we don't really have much in the way of muscles down here. There's a little bit, right? There's a little bit of pockets here, but basically what we have here is kind of similar structures here. So we have a tendinous band that goes around your wrist right before it goes into it. It's going to be kind of your carpal band, and then at each one of these joints, there's going to be a little tendinous band that crosses these joints, and what that does is it holds the tendons that run this way down so that they can bend over that, so they're kind of considered like pulleys and whatnot, right? And that's what it's going to allow us to happen. But most of this is actually going to be happening down here, right? There's a little bit of aid that happens here in the hand, but most of those muscles that are actually causing this are actually, you can actually see right here, right? When I'm moving those, right, that my forearm is going completely active there. So what we have we have muscles that are basically coming, they don't actually come straight down, they come in diagonals here a little bit, that come down and feed into here, right? Some of them do kind of go straight down, but a lot of them actually do cross over. And the reason for that is so that we can work a little bit more with pronation and supination. Now, we do have, up here and down here, we do have diagonal muscles that are considered your pronators and supinators that are going to cause that pronation and supination right there, right? the same thing is kind of true on the backside. So we have muscles that are going to be allowing us to go this way. We have flexors, right? Flexion goes up there, and then we have extensors here, and then we have all the muscles coming here. The thumb is unique. It has this big botch of muscle here, and muscles and tendons that run through here that allows us to do some adduction and abduction there, right? Because we have two bones, just like with our lower leg, we're allowed to flip over and come to more neutral positions, right? So as far as our lower musculature, that's kind of as much detail as I want to go into it. So if you're having issues with your elbow and whatnot, you might be trying to release straight here, but actually, as with any part of your body, a lot of times the problematic part is actually above or below. So it might be overactivity in your biceps, it could be overactivity in your triceps, it could be overactivity in a pronator or supinator, or one of those flexors and extensors, right? So it's one of those things that I would recommend that if you're having lateral or medial epicondylitis, that you would go see somebody who specializes in Graston Technique or active release therapy, which are techniques of muscle release where they will have you go through a range of motion to start with pressure on that muscle, right? So that they can start breaking up the scar tissue that's causing that overactivity. Graston Technique is a massage technique where they take basically a dull, very, very dull steel blade, right? That's usually about, I would say, less than 3/8 of an inch thick, right? And they'll be going and they'll be scraping through the tight muscles there. And one of the things about that is that they're able to actually feel the scar tissue a little bit more clearly. The problem with it is that only when they actually do it, they only can affect tissue up to an inch deep. So, the other muscles that are back here are going to be, of course, your triceps, right? Which are basically kind of very similar structures. And like I said, I have to actually double check really quick that the triceps brachii, I feel like it does not go above. No, actually, the long head, there's a long and short head, just like with the biceps brachii, and I should have known that, but I didn't pay as much attention to that because I kind of always assumed, and I apologize for that. Now I know. So you do have a long head and short head, so it does aid in posterior flexion of that, or extension of that arm, while also causing extension of the lower arm, right? We kind of already talked about what's going on down here. So as far as what's going on here, I think that pretty much does it. It's complicated, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it right now, partially because I'm not as sharp with it, but also partially because it's a lot of details that you don't really need to know. I just kind of want you to be aware of which way the muscles run and that there are muscles in there and how to kind of start to address some other issues. So I think I'm mostly done here, but I kind of want to go ahead and we are going to do a little appendix here, and we're going to talk about that's your back, and here's your skull, and this is kind of more of a lateral view, right? And so basically, when we look into the neck musculature, we have the same structures basically that we have in this cervical area of the spine that run straight up. We have the multifidus-like muscles that go up there that help with lateral flexion and all that. They're called something different at this point in time. But we also have we have a muscle that kind of comes right here and it comes out to the back. That's going to be your sternocleidomastoid. And that's one of the muscles that can be habitually tight. So when we think about this kyphotic posture, and this is kind of what I'm getting back into, is that we have a lot of muscles that kind of pull us into this cervical extension, right? This pulling back of our head. And the reason why we do that is because we're tilted forward and we need to compensate by coming up here. So we're going to have that tightness both from the upper trapezius and the levator scap and the sternocleidomastoid that's going to be pulling us into this position. Now we have more kind of, so if those muscles are all, right here, and some cross over this way, that kind of pull us into this super tight position. We also have what are referred to as our deep cervical flexors, right, that are going to be more minor muscles that pull us back into this more neutral position. So this would be like our scalenes and longus capitis, longus coli, etc. So, when we have issues where we are coming into this kyphotic posture, which for wrestlers, this is going to be a common issue for you, right? And it's going to cause headaches, it's going to cause issues. We have muscles on the side which cause lateral flexion, ones that cause transverse movement, and then we have the ones that are going to cause us to stay in this extension position, which is what we're training in. And so we want to be really, really careful about these muscles. So we want to make sure that we're working on loosening these muscles, and when we come back up into this neutral position, I'm pulling my shoulder blades back and down. I'm tucking my tailbone just a little bit because I have a little bit of anterior pelvic tilt, right? So I'm getting into this kind of more neutral position with a little bit of internal curvature of my back here. And we want to make sure that when we get here, we're thinking about kind of bringing our chin back and lifting back here just a little bit, right? It's not a big movement, but that's going to pull us into this more neutral position, whereas if we are here, right, this is all this back chain. We'll want to massage and stretch through here. We can do lateral stretches here that will actually also help because these muscles are going straight up and down here on one side. So if we do a little bit of lateral flexion, and I actually like to turn my head a little bit so I can find that area that's really tight there, and then I can address those muscles a little bit more in depth. And so one of the ways that we can address the underactivity of these deep cervical flexors is that we can lay on our back and we can do what are called yes, no, maybes. And so what these do are we're nodding yes, we're shaking your head no, we're doing side to side maybe. And the reason why we're doing that is because we gravity is pulling our head down, right? And we're trying to keep it up, so we have to engage those cervical flexors, lateral and transverse flexors, right? To get us to actually work on those muscles that are deep in our neck that are allowing us to stay into that kyphotic posture. But that being said, I kind of really believe that when we start addressing these more major weak structures like a mid to lower trapezius, and serratus anterior and all these muscles that pulse back into this neutral position, we won't have this need to have our head out front, and so that's going to address a lot of that issue. But if we have this and we're always just working on this, it's not going to do you any good because your body's not just going into that posture because it's tight back here. You're feeling that tightness because those muscles are tight. But it's this rounded position, and you having to functionally adjust the position of your cervical spine to meet the changes and the demands of the rest of your body. Does that make sense? Okay. And so the last muscle I'm going to go into today is going to be these muscles right here. And I only bring this up because I've gotten in trouble for this because I didn't think about it at the time. I had a client, we were doing pull-ups at the time, assisted, and she was clenching her teeth, and she was saying that she was feeling some tightness in her face, but I was like, we're not working your face. And then she went to the doctor, found out that she has got some advanced TMJ, probably from sleeping with clenched teeth and all that. And that she just holds all of her tension here in her jaw, right? And so the thing about that is that it's really important that we make an O face as we're exhaling when we're working out, because it's going to keep those muscles relaxed. And that's going to prevent us from having that tightness, lockjaw kind of feeling in here. So, and that can be actually rather painful, and I did end up losing my client for that very reason. It was a one-time mistake. It's one of those things that I think is really, really important to address. Now, you can address that by just kind of massaging through there, right? And we will cover that kind of in the next video, I think. So I'm going to add one more to this playlist. I know, it's long. Thank you for being patient.